Good evening, everybody. Welcome to week 17. Tonight we're going to talk about element 15, eating healthy for life. Actually, kind of every week we talk a little bit about eating healthy for life, right? But we got to dive right in because Lois has a phone call. She told somebody she's going to call back in an hour, so we want to make sure we jump right in. Get things going. I shouldn't have been listening. But anyway, no, we like to have fun here, and so. Now, I want to kick it right off tonight. Actually, this particular element, according to the book, it takes 2 to 4 weeks to kind of work through it and process through it and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to go through it in less than an hour, and I'm going to try to keep things moving pretty good. But at the same time, I just want to remind you that all of the stuff that we cover is in the Life book. This is not the Bible. The Bible is much more important than this, but it's about as big as the Bible, and it has a lot of really important information in it. And so I want to encourage you guys with your Life book, even after this. My hope is that I kind of crack the nut for you, make it a little bit easier, more digestible, a little bit more comfortable to go through. But at the end of the day, you're going to find the details that you need for your own journey and decisions that you need to make in your Life book. So, we got a few new people here tonight, and I just want to mention that this Health and Hope thing is free and open to all. I do teach a particular program, and but at the same time, there's a lot of health information and nutrition information that you can get by being here, and we just hope that this whole thing is a blessing to whoever shows up. So we thank you for coming, and always feel free to welcome and bring somebody along, somebody who may also want to begin or advance their own health journey. Okay? All right, so a few weeks ago, I asked the question about whose responsibility is our health. And I know this is probably going to be repetition for anybody that wasn't here that week. It may be new information, but here's the thing. I want to start by saying this: the condition of your health is not all your fault. Great. The reason for that, yeah, that's great, right? So let's all say, oh, pressure's off, right? Sometimes we feel like, well, it's all my fault, but the truth is that the culture we live in makes it very difficult for us to eat healthy, to get the exercise that we need, and all of those things. So we say it's not all your fault, and we're going to get into that even a little bit more, but we also say, but it is 100% your responsibility. My health is my own responsibility. Nobody else is going to take care of this body for me. Nobody else is going to monitor what passes through these teeth, and nobody else is going to monitor how much exercise I get, and all of that. So my health is 100% my responsibility. But our hope here is to empower you to take responsibility of your health and give you the tools to pursue optimal health. So that when you walk out of here, you feel like you're fired up, you're given the information and the encouragement, the support that you need. That's part of the reason I love this support group that's growing just a little bit each week, because it helps all of us to find the resources that we need to be effective, and then ultimately to have the tools that we need in our private life, in those moments when we sit down to eat or we decide what we're going to do for exercise, so that we can pursue our health. So let's talk a little bit about how we did get here. It's not our fault 100%, right? But how did we get here? I think it's important for us to understand a little bit of the history, because that'll help us to break reality from what we may imagine and all of that. First of all, we didn't used to have so many choices. Right? Back in the day, 100 years ago, we didn't have near as many choices, but imagine a few hundred years ago, before especially a lot of the processes that we use to process food and things like that. That's both good and bad, right? We like having more options. We like having lots and lots of different varieties of food and those kinds of things. And so we all wanted more choices. And how do I know that? Because we voted that way, right? How did McDonald's get to be where they're at? They got how many billions of votes? You know what I mean? It's on their sign, right? And at the end of the day, when we buy something from somewhere, we're voting. We're saying, I want that. Anybody in here never had McDonald's? Okay, so all of us have put in at least one vote, right? At least one. So we voted for McDonald's, we voted for Taco Bell, we voted for Wendy's, for BK, we voted for Marie Calendar, DiGiorno, Little Debbie's. I've voted a lot for Little Debbie's. Yeah, back in the day. A company stays in business by getting votes. We vote with our money. And so what's happened over time is that Americans have voted for what we currently have. Now, that goes both directions. Hi, Mary. Come on in. That goes both directions. It gives us some things that we enjoy, but it also has put us in a place where now it has become very much our culture to eat the way that we do. We have to understand also the role of culture. Pretty much, when we go to a McDonald's or something like that, we don't even feel bad about it. It oftentimes doesn't even register in our conscience because everybody goes to McDonald's, right? And it's very socially acceptable. So when things are deeply ingrained in our culture, it makes it a little bit more difficult for us to go a different direction, right? We have a tendency to go with the flow, and the flow of our culture is toward the kinds of foods that are not healthy for us. So, let's see if anybody happens to know the answer to this. Food companies are in business to make A, healthy people, or B, money. Who thinks it's A?
Money.
All right, absolutely. Food companies are in business to make money. Now, I do believe that food companies have good intentions as well, but at the end of the day, they're going to make decisions based on what they believe is going to build their business, right? So unfortunately, many companies appeal to the lowest, most compulsive level of our consciousness in order to get our attention and play on our appetites. So if McDonald's believes that people like their French fries, which they're pretty sure people do, they're going to keep making those French fries. They're not going to slow down, right? The other thing that kind of throws us off a little bit, good evening, come on in, is that just being FDA approved doesn't mean it's healthy or even safe. Sometimes we think, well, isn't the government there to protect us? If the FDA has approved something, it must be fine. By the way, if it's FDA approved, it just means it won't kill you outright. You're not going to go home and die from it, right? But that does not mean the FDA, if the FDA approves something, it does not mean that that thing isn't dangerous and unhealthy, and possibly even toxic to some degree. All right, now not all food companies are guilty as charged, but we have to understand the motivation behind business, and we have to understand that we have to be aware, and we have to be looking at those things, and we have to do that with a certain amount of discernment. We can't just take things at face value, especially when it comes to our food, right? Because at the end of the day, even though we live in a country with many, many, many options, and those options are good in a lot of different ways, with privilege comes responsibility. We have to understand that when we have more privilege, more opportunity, that means that we have to step up and be able to take responsibility for that. All right? So I want to give you a little bit of an illustration that may be helpful, because again, so much of this is mental, so much of it is cultural. But from what I understand, from what I've seen, I'd like to put it in kind of this sense that that we have created kind of a false north when it comes to food, right? The way that we choose our food, the way that we think about our food. And if you try to use a compass to get somewhere, and you've got the wrong direction pointing north, what's going to happen? You're not going to get there. You're going to get lost, right? A right-hand turn is supposed to be left, and I didn't know that. Well, now I'm in the wrong place. And so many times, I got into a little bit of a conversation with some people over in the bar beforehand, because I had to wait. There was a meeting here, and I couldn't get in right away. So I went over there and hung out a little bit. And I was in a conversation with some of the ladies, and one of them was saying, you know, the truth is, most of us were just never taught how to eat right. I'm like, yeah, that's right. And it's not even necessarily our parents or the school or the different places, but it's just we haven't as a culture been educated. And unfortunately, the food that is put before us takes us in the wrong direction. And it's like the culture is leading us in a different way. So we keep getting lost because we're following the crowd and the culture. The smiles on the commercials convince us that the people eating the juicy burger are just doing just fine, and it's all good. So we inadvertently set our compass to match the direction of the culture, but what if the globe is flipped? You see, north in our culture is high carbs, lots of sugar, lots of fats, lots of sodium. If you go into most of the fast food restaurants, that's like the recipe right there. You just mix all that together and you microwave it for a little bit. We got dinner. And this is the recipe that sells. So we also can't blame them, right? It's a partnership. It goes both ways. So enticing food commercials, slick marketing, colorful branding, bold presentations have all sucked us into thinking that eating that way is okay. So what we have to do is we have to intentionally flip the map, and we have to intentionally make decisions about true north. We must set our compass to true north when it comes to our nutrition. And that just, like I said, that takes intentionality. And that's what this whole book is about. It's about helping us to understand those things. It's about helping us to understand, well, what's wrong with the carbs? They're so good. What's wrong with all that sodium and all that fat? They taste so good. So this helps us to be able to wrap our minds around why we need to make the change, and then what changes need to be made in our mindset. Okay? So, at the beginning of this chapter, Dr. A, the writer of the book, says, "My healthy eating system is designed to help you monitor and manage your energy intake." Remember we talked a few weeks ago about the fact that food is fuel. Sometimes nutritionists try to get us to think you need to fuel your body well, think of food as fuel. No, food is fuel. Whether it's good or bad, it's fuel. So we need to monitor and manage our energy intake while ensuring that we get a healthy, balanced diet. This isn't just about being skinny, this is about being healthy. So, some of the tools that we have on our sides, the Life Book. By the way, there's lots of other books out there, and I wouldn't discourage anyone from using any of those other books. What I will say, though, about the Life Book is I feel like it's very well laid out. It invites us into the process of discovery. It helps us to be able to learn the things that we need to learn and even process kind of where we're at in the process of thinking about those things. It's laid out in a very, I think, accessible way. In other words, lots of colorful pictures. That helps me. And one thing that we want to help you to understand is that while the food companies may be very interested in making money, and yes, I do get paid to do what I do, my goal is to help you be healthy. We want to help you to get healthy. So this guide is a great starting point to give you a foundational education so that you can take control of your diet and your health. Also, I want to encourage you to get on the internet. Now, you got to be careful where you get your information from. There's a ton of really great information out there, especially if you want to learn about specific principles. Maybe you see a principle played out here and you want to kind of extend your understanding. I encourage you to dive in and really get to the bottom of stuff. The third tool that I think is really important are food labels. I'm going to be, in future weeks, I'm going to be getting into food labels. One of the things, actually, I'm probably going to post it in the next couple of days, but is a comparison between yogurts. You would be surprised, shocked at the difference in the value between two common brand name yogurts. And that difference will make a massive difference in your health. So when we are shopping, we need to be aware of what to look for in the labels, and then we need to be wise in order to determine what we should be buying and putting on our shelves. All right. Now, like I said at the beginning, this particular chapter, this element, according to the book, says it'll probably take you 2 to 4 weeks to get through it. So even though I cover a whole bunch of stuff tonight, I want to encourage you to go back to your Life Book and spend some time kind of going through, sifting through this information and learning it. All right, so I am going to cover a few basic principles tonight, and again, I'm just going to kind of skip over the surface, but I want to get you some things to get started on. I want to open some things, and then of course we're going to have some question and answer time so that we can unpack these things a little bit more. There are a million ways to lose weight. How many of you guys have been on some kind of weight loss program before? Any kind of weight loss program? Okay, almost everybody in the room. Most of us have gotten very good at losing weight, but statistics tell us that what we're not good at is keeping the weight off. 80 to 85% of people gain the weight that they lose on a specific program back within a year, and within 2 years of, I don't know what the statistic is, but it's a huge number, have gained more than they lost. And that can be really discouraging. As a matter of fact, I find that a lot of people that may be apprehensive to get involved in our program are kind of like, I've been there, done that. I've tried them all before, they don't work, right? I lose the weight, then it comes right back. That's one of the things that's very different about what we do. I would say that as a coach, I take what happens after you reach your target weight every bit as much important, maybe even more important than what it takes to get to your target weight. Because maintenance is what is going to lead us toward true health. Even getting to our target weight does not establish true health. It helps us, but once we get there, we need to continue moving forward. So, I was going to ask who hasn't been good at sustaining weight loss, but I'm not going to do that. Nobody's going to want to raise their hands. We don't want to out it. So I will ask this: who wants to get good at maintaining their weight loss? Oh man, just as many hands. That's awesome. Good. I can read your minds. That's good. Okay. So part of the training, part of what we want to do too, is we want to help you to reach a certain level of confidence that you know what it takes to be able to maintain your weight loss. It's amazing how much of this whole health journey has to do with our mindset. If we go into it going, I don't even know if I'm going to lose the weight, I probably won't lose the weight, I've never been good at losing the weight, then it's more difficult. And if we enter the maintenance portion, or we even at the beginning wonder if we're ever going to be able to keep this weight off, it's going to be just as important. So my hope is that we can give you the kind of information, the kind of tools that's going to help you to have a certain level of confidence. So we do things like teach you the skills to create a new lifestyle of health, a new nutrition plan. We introduce things like Stop, Challenge, and Choose. Has anybody watched that video or dug into that training at all? Okay. I encourage you to do that. It was in that Welcome to Optavia email. There was a training that Dr. A did in there. There was a link to Stop, Challenge, and Choose. Basically what it boils down to is we have to build in the habit of stopping when we're tempted, challenging our thoughts. Is this thing, whether it be the things that we're eating or exercise that we're considering, like lack of exercise, like is me sitting on the couch all day long on Saturday, going to lead me toward my health goals? Is eating this thing going to lead me toward my health goals? I've got to challenge what's been put in front of me, and then I've got to make a choice. And at the end of the day, that's part of the reason why remembering our why is so important. We got to remember, why am I on this health journey to begin with? What are my core motivations? So that when it comes time to challenging those things that are in front of me, I can say, I remember thinking I am not going to go back to the way that I was. I am not going to go to the doctor and hear her tell me I'm in the obese category on the BMI one more time. That was my thing. It really got under my skin. All right, so here's a few skills, a few ideas. This one is on page 292 of the Life Book. The 9-inch plate system. Most of our plates are 12 inches. So our hips are, never mind. Not going to talk about inches there. Anyway, but what Dr. A recommends is that we buy some 9-inch plates that are a little bit smaller, and that we kind of imagine, now this is after we've achieved our goal weight. So a lot of what I'm going to be talking about tonight is about maintenance, is about a health system for moving forward, because it's about eating healthy for life. So what you can look forward to if you're on program is reintroducing things like fruits and grains. But while we're on the program, we're focusing almost entirely on protein and low glycemic vegetables. But once we are done with our weight loss program, then we're going to reintroduce fruits, and then we're going to reintroduce grains. And at the end of the day, we want to be at about 25% protein, about 25% grains. We're going to go over which ones are going to be the helpful ones. And then between fruits and vegetables, we want a little less than half of that to be fruits and a little bit more than half of that to be vegetables. Now, as I said a few weeks ago, all vegetables are not created equal. All fruits are not created equal. All meats or proteins are not created equal. All grains are not created equal. So a huge part of this process is understanding the difference between which ones are going to give us certain nutrients, which ones are going to give us certain types of energy. One of the things that's important to remember, and you may be able to write this down, there's actually four types of energy. Two of them are in the same category. Does anybody know what they are? Let me say this, 4 types of calories. So there's proteins. Proteins are 4 calories per gram of protein. There are carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are also 4 grams, or 4 calories per gram. And then there's fats. Fats are 9 calories per gram. And then there's alcohol. Alcohol is 7 grams, but it breaks down into carbohydrates. So there's three main categories. Alcohol is a kind of a side category. But learning how all of those things work together and learning what contributes to our energy, remember that all of our calories are our fuel, they're our source of energy, and how to balance those things out is going to be an important part of maintenance, especially. All right? So the 9-inch plate system is realizing that for a given meal, we're going to want to have a balance of these things. Now, it doesn't mean you have to have every one of these in every meal, but throughout the course of a day, we want to kind of hit these percentages, 25% protein, 25% grains, more than 25% vegetables, less than 25% fruits. And the fruits and vegetables are going to kind of balance together, okay? Any questions about that? It comes very natural once you've learned, especially as we're going to look at the glycemic index, as you begin to learn which things are just on the list, it helps you to think through which things you're going to want to put in your grocery cart and have on hand. Yeah, Ron?
About your plate there?
Yeah.
So how big of proportions can you have?
That's a great question. That's a really great question. So we're going to answer that next. Portion sizes for grains. Imagine a tennis ball. So if you have a pile of rice on your plate, you're gonna want a pile about the size of a tennis ball. Okay. Same with like oatmeal or the different grains that you do.
So the grains, everything's different then.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
So for your protein, you're gonna imagine a deck of cards.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. And these are very broad generalizations, but it helps you to know if I've got 4 decks of cards, probably got too much, right? Yeah. And then for the fruits and vegetables, like a small paperback book.
Oh, that's pretty big.
So I don't know if that is helpful to you. Again, this information is this is on page 293 of your book, but it talks about portion sizes to help us to be able to visualize it.
Yeah.
Now, over time, again, as you're in the kitchen thinking through your meals and making decisions and things like that, you'll kind of get used to it, but it's going to become especially helpful when you go out to eat. So when you go out to eat, you don't always know how much is there, but I mean, if you go to a Chinese restaurant, they're going to give you like 4 tennis balls. And actually, rice is weird because they fit like 5 tennis balls of rice into something about the size of a tennis ball. I don't know how they do it, but it just keeps coming up. But anyway, we can kind of think through that when it comes to grains and and keep those things in mind.
Well,
Okay?
restaurants have a tendency to serve real big portions right now,
Yeah.
but you can split them up, take half of it home.
Well, that's actually what we're gonna talk about next. We're gonna talk about some tips for dining out.
Okay.
You guys are like right one step ahead of me. I should be talking faster. So this stuff is, you know, again, as you're working in your own kitchen and as you're shopping and doing recipes and all of that kind of stuff, you feel like you have a little bit more control. But we need to know what to do when we're dining out. So there's a bunch of really good ideas here. So first of all, visualize the divisions on a 9-inch plate. They may bring you a 12 or even a 14-inch plate that may be covered with stuff, but imagine that. So sometimes you could think of ordering 2 appetizers instead of 1 entree. The trouble with appetizers is what percentage of those is deep fried? And those, they're not on the 9-inch plate illustration at all. So, but, you know, it may be, you know, the appetizers may be some kind of greens or something like that. Split a meal with a dining companion. I think that's what you were talking about, Dad. A lot of times it's good. You save money that way, and you also discipline yourself not to eat too much. Most meals that you get in a restaurant are going to be actually 3 to 4 servings when you really break it down. And I know for me, myself, I have no problem putting away 4 servings of food. I've done it many times. Wasn't a good idea. Bad idea, but I did it. I think we've all been there. Don't rely on a chef or waiter to serve the proper amount of food. Sometimes we say, well, that's 1 serving. It's on the menu as a serving, right? Woohoo! We have to be responsible for our health. We can't expect that somebody else is going to be responsible for us. One of the things you can do is ask for a to-go box right at the beginning. Can I have a to-go box with my food? Well, you want it to go? No, I still want it on my plate, but I want a to-go box. It'll confuse them. But you just say, please just bring me a to-go box. Or an extra plate. And then what you can do is, right when your food gets there, take off what you don't want to eat, put it in the box, close the lid, put a seal on it, tape it up with duct tape, shove it under your seat, give it to a homeless person, I don't know, whatever you need to do. But at the end of the day, you want to you make a decision at the very beginning of the meal, how much you're going to eat, what's the right amount to eat, and then put the rest out of sight. Okay? Now, I'm not trying to tell you what to do. I'm just trying to give you some good tips. If you want to reach your goals, these are the kinds of things that you can do to help. I got a bunch more here. One of the things I like to do is look at the menu of a restaurant. Nice thing with everything is online nowadays. You can look at the menu earlier in the day, right after you've had a fueling. Well, not right after, but like 25 minutes after you've had a fueling. When you're not hungry, that's the time to choose what you're going to have at dinner tonight. Don't wait till you're sitting there looking at all the choices and going, I was going to get that, but oh man. Right? Because that's where we slide off the path and into the ditch. Okay? So it's wise. And I've had a lot of clients who've said, yeah, we're going out with friends or we're going out with family and I don't know what I'm going to do. And so this is a really, go online first, decide what you're going to have, and then when you get there, don't even open the menu. You've already looked at the menu. You've already made your decision. Just put the menu to the side and say, I'll have the, and let them know what healthy option you're going to have. Right? Don't starve yourself before you go either. Sometimes, well, again, this is pre-programmed myelin. Would be like, I'm not even eating lunch today because we're going out tonight. I'm going to pound it, man. I'm going to enjoy that meal, right? And I'm going to eat up. But again, I was on a different plan in those days. It wasn't a good plan. It was a plan I had to pay a price to get to change. So don't starve yourself before you go. You're on a new plan now, so think ahead and be smart. What can I do to make sure that when I'm there, I can enjoy the company of the people that I'm with, rather than sitting there wishing I was having that or whatever. So if you go not starving to death, you're going to be able to enjoy what you've ordered, which you chose ahead of time, and you're going to be able to focus on your company rather than what you're eating or not eating. Okay.
Myelin, also
Yeah.
one of the things that I will do sometimes is I will just drink a bottle of water about 5 minutes before dinner.
Yep, yep.
And then-
Yeah, or usually there's some time between the time you order and the time your meal gets there, and they usually bring the drinks first.
Mhm.
You could drink a glass or two of water
Yeah,
during that time, so that when your food arrives,
Yeah.
you've already, you know.
so
yep,
then
very
that
good.
half a meal is plenty.
Yep, absolutely. Very good, excellent. Yep. You could try to pace yourself to be the slowest eater at the table. I listened to a person giving a talk on this, and that was one of the things that they suggested. I was like, yeah, I never thought about that. But we do know that we will eat less if we eat slower. And so if you can just kind of look at the other people around the table, and you know, if you finished half of your meal and the others have only taken a couple bites, that could be a good reminder.
You know, you need to talk to your brother-in-law, Jamie, about that.
Uh-oh. We're gonna have to edit that off the video. Anyway.
Oh, is it on there?
You'll probably-
The other thing is that as you go on, you're gonna learn a lot about meal prep and that kind of stuff, which kinds of things are really adding massive empty calories to the dishes that you're preparing and things like that, which is gonna help you to know how to ask good questions of your waiter or your waitress. Now, I remember I worked at a few different restaurants when I was in college, and my favorite one was Ruby Tuesday. I loved Ruby Tuesday. It was a great restaurant, but the thing that I really liked about it is they were really an excellent restaurant. It was one of the few restaurants that I would want to actually eat at when I was off work, or I'd want to take my family to because I cared about my family. Most restaurants, if you've worked there, you don't want to eat there, right? Because you know what happens in the kitchen. They were very excellent, and one of the things it took me, I don't know, it was like 10 days of training, because I needed to know everything on the menu, and I needed to know how everything was prepared, so that if a customer asked me about anything on the menu, I could tell them. Now, at 19 years old, that didn't make a bunch of sense to me. I thought it was cool, but I was like, what's the big deal? Now I know, because for a lot of people, they want to make sure they're not trusting the restaurant to give them healthy food. They've got questions of their own about how the food is being prepared. So, and I also learned that that's how you earn your tip. By the way, tips should be earned. I'm sorry, don't get me started. But a good waiter or a good waitress will be very patient, and they will be happy to let you know how the food is prepared, and they'll also be happy to make whatever suggestions or changes you want to make. So you can ask how the meat is being prepared and what kind of oils are being used and things like that. Yeah, Terry, did you have a question?
No. Do you know the definition of tips?
No.
To ensure prompt service.
Ah, or proper. Or what are some other good people? Yeah, absolutely. During dessert, if the rest of the table decides to get dessert, maybe you could order some tea or coffee.
Are you serious?
Order extra.
Come on, man, help us out. All right, yeah, don't be afraid to ask too many questions. That's what the waiter or waitress is for. Any other good tips? Again, this is community. Part of the reason we gather here is because I'm not the only one who knows anything. Do you guys have some ideas, some things that you've learned about?
Salad dressing on the side.
Excellent. Yep.
Don't be afraid to ask the waitress if you can substitute something for something else.
Good.
Absolutely.
Good.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, one of the big changes I made was when the burger, is on the menu, I always ask, what are the other side options? And a lot of times broccoli is one of those side options. And so when I go to Clementine's, I don't get the fries anymore. I get the broccoli.
Oh.
But the broccoli's good.
Yeah.
So,
It is good.
yeah, they do a really good job there. When you go to a nice restaurant, they know how to make even broccoli taste good.
Yeah.
They might put too much butter in it. I'll have to ask next time. What other tips? Any other restaurant ideas? Okay. Yeah, as we go along, we can share more of those ideas as they come up. All right. The glycemic index is not the only indicator, but according to what I'm reading and what I'm learning and what Dr. Anderson would say, it's one of the most important. So we're gonna talk about the glycemic index a little bit more tonight. We did it a couple of weeks ago too. And then we'll talk about some of the other things, but this is one that's really important to understand. So there are several graphs in the book. So again, as you're moving forward, as you're learning all of this, it'll be important to kind of become familiar with how those things lay out. But basically saying that low glycemic index, and remember again, glycemic is the amount of glucose that this food is going to produce in your system. And what's the downside of glucose when we dump too much of it in our system at once?
High sugar.
It's high sugar, which
Diabetes,
makes our body do what?
Insulin.
Insulin, right? It's like we've got an insulin pump in there. And what I want you to imagine is when you eat something that's really high carbohydrate, sugar, something like that, your insulin pump starts going, shooting out insulin right into your system, okay? That insulin is there, it's designed to be a safety feature. It's designed to keep your blood sugar level from getting too high. The problem is, we don't want to be living on a safety feature, right? Because that safety feature has its own downside. The insulin that our body produces will cause us to be lethargic, right? Because what it wants to do is pull that blood sugar level down. But it also turns on the craving later on in the day for more of what turned it on in the beginning, unfortunately. Insulin in our system has a lot to do with our cravings, but it also turns on the fat producing system in our body, right? So insulin has a lot to do with the process of turning all those carbohydrates into fats. And so we really want to do whatever we can to keep that insulin pump from going, okay? So low glycemic index, moderate, high, and toxic. So just to give you a little bit of a look here, here are the vegetables. We've got zucchini, spinach, peppers, onions, mushrooms, alfalfa sprouts, things like that. A lot of the dark green vegetables are going to be very low on the glycemic index. Those are going to be the kinds of things that we want to be aiming for. And if you're on the program, you'll notice that these are all of the things that are on the program, and these things are not, right? Because they're high glycemic. Now, that doesn't mean that these things are bad. It just means that during the weight loss phase, we need to eliminate them from our diet. All right, this is the fruit glycemic index chart. Somebody asked if avocados was a fruit. Was that you, Rex?
Probably.
Yeah. Probably. He's like, yeah, that's something I would ask. So, as you can see, there's the low glycemic fruits. Again, all of these fruits are good for us in different ways. All of them bring certain vitamins, minerals, antioxidants for sure. But when we're talking about the volume of our diet, we want to make sure that we're mostly in the low glycemic area, okay? So here we have the pastas, potatoes, rice, things like that. There are a few what we would consider low glycemic, pasta, potatoes, and rice, but quite a few that aren't, and those things break down into loads of glucose. French fries, just about off the charts there.
Yeah.
Again, I really want to encourage you to keep this in mind. You do not have to know all of this stuff to be successful. I think if you can learn a little bit one week and a little bit more the next week and just apply what you're learning, you're going to make massive changes. It's about shifting that globe and putting north back where it belongs, making wise choices, continuing to learn, and not getting overwhelmed with all that there is. Okay? All right. Well, thanks again, you guys, for coming tonight, for being a part of Health and Hope. Feel free to bring anybody else next week, and we'll continue. Like I said, we're going to talk about addictive foods next week, and we'll just keep unpacking this a bit at a time, okay? All right. Have a great week.